Before I begin, I'd like to advise anyone and everyone looking to pick up this older gem to play the original Xbox 360 version. On Steam and current consoles there is the Redux version, which is fine, but it uses the same streamlined gameplay of its sequel, which rather than modifying the game levels to fit the old encounters with new AI, the game becomes too easy and thus uninteresting in these sections. That being said, most people will not be able to readily play the original version, so I'm going to be playing the Redux version to give a taste of that experience, which will become the dominant version over time.
Solaces run through the tunnels like rats. The Dark Ones are not simple mutants. They're Homo Novus, the next step in evolution. You've heard about survival of the fittest? Guess what? We lost.
What's happened to you, Alex? You can go like lambs to the slaughter. I'll hang on to whatever life I got with teeth and claws. And I'll take more than a few of your Homo Novus with me to hell.
Metro 2033, as a concept and game, has been somewhat stuck in my imagination stemming from my very first experience with it in print. This was my first foray into the medium of gaming journalism, and though some would be quick to tag this publications and others like it, this magazine, for me personally, gave me exposure to a number of games that at that time I would have never even begun to have knowledge of. I remember reading the small one-page article over and over, trying to squeeze every detail out of it possible. This small image of a man checking his wristwatch in an apocalyptic nightmare was somehow intoxicating. There was a realism in the approach to design that seemed needed and obvious. I sadly had to wait years before actually jumping into the game, as it only appeared on the 360 up until a couple years ago. But when I finally found the key to this game, I was literally pulled into an entirely different world. I was so enthralled that I created terrible walkthrough videos created by shooting my TV with an old video camera a few years ago.
Guide of hardcore difficulty and inline mending of Metro 2033.
Disgusting. Moving forward, from a personal experience being an American and having played a limited amount of foreign-created games, the game experience I had with Ukrainian developer 4A's Metro 2033 was a totally alien experience. Taking games like Fallout, Borderlands, and Gears of War, created by American developers, into consideration, they display blatant power fantasy in combat and in plot. The game relies, in most cases, on a sense of freedom from the circumstances, even if they come at the expense of comfortability and societal norms. The apocalypse, though dire, is eclipsed by your ability to chainsaw an enemy in half or by racking up critical hits against the badass mini-boss before you. In Metro 2033, the experience is bleak and daunting. The game is centered around surviving. Every inch is a victory, and death comes quickly and without remorse. The bleak tone seeps into the setting as the landscapes are out of an industrial nightmare. As buildings decay around you, they are presented within bleak blues and disgusting dark greens. Comparing this to another popular American post-apocalyptic game, The Last of Us, it creates a world that lives on despite the destruction of humanity. Nature seems to have sprung up once again from the earth and beautifully retaken it. This creates a sense of awe in most cases, whereas Metro uses locales of dirt and grime to make you feel trapped in even the most open environments. This is accentuated in the design of the gas mask mechanic and what I feel is prime reasons I love this game. When on the surface of Metro 2033, your character has to have a working gas mask as well as several air filters to survive. The Russian landscape has been ravaged by the horrors of nuclear war, and so the air has become as poisonous as the population. There's an inherent pressure induced by the always clicking clock of your gas mask's air filter deteriorating. Your approach to the world is one of fear. Every encounter oozes tension as you weigh in your mind the possibility that this one fight will destroy your ability to continue even if you survive. Each time you're hit from the front in combat, your gas mask breaks. The mechanic exists as an external threat outside of simple health and creates a problem of resource management. You may have all the health packs in the world, but if your gas mask breaks, you will die within seconds. Another great element of this mechanic is how seamlessly it is presented to the player. Even without a HUD or heads-up display, which is marked as one of the many difficulty settings, you can identify by listening to the sound of your character breathing heavily to identify that you need a new air filter. There's no need to have a counting clock when you can hear this air start to choke RTM. The entire game, even with an option for a normal HUD, uses across the board a diegetic UI philosophy. Diegetic in this context meaning the character in a game can see and use the materials in front of the player. For example, in Dead Space, where I've noticed this term being used most apparently, Isaac, Dead Space main character, for the most part interacts with the majority of the UI in-game. The only feature that can be seen as non-diegetic can be seen as the health system, which is illustrated on the back of Isaac's suit, though, functionally, it still works to keep the player engaged in the game world. You're never having to look at the side of the screen to see a red bar that shows you what you're doing. You look at your player. character the entire time you're doing this. The flashlights and pneumatic guns are diegetic in the way that they are manually charged by RTM, and not in the way like Bioshock, where the character, whenever buying something or hacking a terminal, is brought into a UI screen outside of the character's view or the world. Processes like these allow the player to take a moment to consider his or her surroundings, as well as making every piece of equipment feel concrete and real. When you have that moment where your flashlight starts to waver in a dark, eerie tunnel, enemies beginning to surround you, you frantically start to charge your flashlight for any hope of survival, and in this moment you feel immersed. Systems like these made me feel invested. The game has this way of making you feel that everything you own is on the verge of getting you killed. Everything is makeshift and variable. Objectives can be checked via a large clipboard held by the player, as well as a lighter to illuminate the world in the clipboard as well. The mechanic, though free from UI, is cumbersome, but works in the context of the game world. RTM, the main character, would, given the circumstances, always be aware of what he's doing next, so checking to see what's due next, though accessible, is a great way to get killed. And thankfully the game forgoes a breadcrumb trail or marker showing where the player needs to go next. Obviously the game is not an open world experience, though it has many moments where the character is flung into or outdoor areas that have a variety of sandbox-like level. Though linear, this game could have easily resorted to the stock marker or circle reticle telling the player where to go, what to look at. The diegetic design also feeds into the guns, which for example allow the player to see how many bullets are available. There's something quite real about counting your bullets in game without a box in the corner telling you that X number of bullets are left. The bastard gun and auto gun are great examples of this, as they brandish the cartridges around their respective weapons. Other weapons like the revolver and double-barrel shotgun come close to this given their inherent scarcity of bullet capacity, allowing the player to be able to count their respective bullets. This is not an overall gun feature, as you do have the standard assault rifles and some pneumatic weapons where the ammo is stored away from the player's view. So, it's a in this case it's a sorta good, sorta bad. I'm an idiot. Anyway, all these game systems play into the way the game is trying to lure you into immersion. This all may seem like a stretch to say that using diegetic design even matters, but I want you to think about how obnoxious screens can be cluttered. Though not a bad game series, Borderlands uses an incredible amount of normal UI on screen, and though you can filter your view away from these systems supporting your view, you're never entirely engaged with what is staring you right in the face. The vulgarity of killing and violence is gamified, and not in a way that hurts the mind and teaches people how to kill, but in a way that makes the conflict not as fun or impactful. When I played Metro, I was allowed to be RTM. The game allowed me to turn off the UI and sink into his shoes. The diegetic design of the gameplay feeds into the plot and well-used karma system. Now, let's get to the plot. On the surface, the plot of Metro 2033 would play against this, given its loose nature. Our team seems to be on a directionless ride through hell with only one objective in mind: to notify the metro station, Polis, that a family friend Hunter has died, and then you have a message from him. The narrative is much less of a story than a collection of moments. This would usually be a negative to pass of the game for me. There are only a few characters that get any kind of fleshing out, and even then they are either killed or leave the player soon after becoming acquainted. Each section becomes detached, and staying in any location too long is never encouraged. You're always moving forward. Though, for me, the game matches its ability to feel real through this avenue of storytelling. Characters' moments and conflicts are left entirely unresolved, but in such a way that never leaves you unsatisfied and confused. Life in the Metro is a harsh existence, and people don't get better, they simply survive another day. A plot with a traditional arc and payoff would only create dissonance with the game world, which is always telling a more brutal human story. After giving Hunter's message to Polis, you eventually find yourself confronted with taking care of a race of mutated beings, only called the Dark Ones. They are encroaching on the metro stations and have the ability to warp the minds of any and all who come within their space of influence. Men's minds and bodies are left ravaged in their wake. Except you. Our team seems to be unaffected by their siren song, enough to protect others against its influence. From the outset, the Dark Ones are established as a force that needs to be stopped. No one understands their motives or even what they truly are, but most everyone agrees to their extermination. Now to the climax. Artyom, after discovering an old Soviet missile base, D9, and grabbing a missile-guiding terminal, races to the top of a tower overlooking the Dark One's inky black nest and their reign of terror. He places the missile-guiding terminal and is immediately stricken with the mental attack from the Dark Ones. The story diverges here. The first ending is canon, where you, Artyom, succeed in decimating the race of Dark Ones. Looking on at the devastation, Artyom wonders about what his actions mean and what he stands for. The other ending is what really piques my interest, and I would say is probably the true ending to this game. It's only received through what I will call experience moments. These are never fully explained in the game, and for the first 2 times I played the game, I had no idea they existed. Experience moments are little moments and actions our team can take to expand his understanding of the world. They can be as little as playing a guitar to relieve the tension, all the way up to risking your life, to completing a man's dying wish. There are good and bad moments to achieve, and they exist on a spectrum of impact calculated in the background. The decisions are usually easy to identify morally, but the majority of them are simply wanting the player to take a moment and be mindful of his situation and environment.
One thing before you go. I can see that you look up to Hunter, but a ranger's life is different than ours. They are reckless, even violent by nature. There's nothing to be gained by playing the hero, so stay clear of trouble. See the caravan to its destination and come home as soon as possible. Goodbye, my boy.
Some of the best examples of these moments are simply by treating the world like it's real, and that the NPCs around you are feeling people. There's a simplicity to the system that leaves it to be discovered, and not accompanied by a prompt that says good or bad karma. I love the idea of karma or moral systems, even if they've always been too obvious in their significance of games. Games like Infamous or the Mass Effect series gave me a taste of what these systems could mean, while also giving me such a watered-down version that blank a red or blue prompt, allowing you to wager the complex decision of whether you want to be a good or bad guy. Games after Metro like Spec Ops: The Line have taken great strides to make such decisions complicated and essential to the overall plot, though none that I've seen have created the system based on discussions and knowledge the player character can attain to allow another choice to occur. A third of the way through the game, you meet Khan, a very spiritual and cryptic man who many friends of mine have informed me is the annoying monk guy that spouts way too much exposition. The character to some is irksome, but the great thing about him is that he's optional in his ideas that he conveys. Stray too far from Khan while he speaks and he won't bother, and you won't get that experience moment. You get to decide how much of the world our team will understand.
They know we are here. Come closer to the tubes and listen. Just don't stay for too long. Some say it's the voice of the tunnels. Others consider it to be a form of psychic influence.
There are few moments where the game forces you to stay and listen. The world of the Metro is a place where you have to try to be enlightened. You are bombarded with images of death and brutality, and in the end, you have to make the choice to understand that there's always another way. When you finally receive enough points, you learn that everything you've been working for has been wrong. Your ability to stop the Dark One's influence was also the same power that has always allowed you to speak with them. The Dark Ones were desperately trying to communicate with humanity, but they were always left with inflicting pain or suffering pain themselves. You were the one they could reach, and with a more open-minded understanding, you hear them call out, "We want peace." You shoot the guided missile terminal off the building. Everything you worked to accomplish, every death you agonized through, and each death you inflicted all come to the front of your mind as you understand what reality you've been shying away from. Metro 2033 asks the player to understand, and in that understanding, life gets worse. Depending on your view of this ending, it could very well be the bad ending. All of the game systems force the player to feel invested, to face the situation right in front of them. The game allows you to use a heads-up display and allows you to kill the Dark Ones, but the game is made without these in mind. And then what sets this game apart is the ability to allow the player to face the void without the usual gaming qualities that seem to penetrate the rest of the medium. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Visual Stories. It took a lot of time. I've always loved Metro 2033, and I'm willing to agree to disagree on the merits of what I'm talking about, because I feel like I jump a little bit too far in this one, especially in my designation. The UI was never inherently built into Metro, but I think it still holds strong that they built the game with enough diegetic design that you can play without it. That it shouldn't just be a difficulty setting, it should be a plus to the game. You can play it with having all this information, which I'm not disputing is very useful in most cases, but I think when you take that off and you sort of take that moment to sort of experience the world around you in the game, the game is better for it. So anyway, thank you for watching. Please leave your thoughts about this game and other games like it that you may have found with similar systems, because I'm seriously looking for a moral system that hits even the smallest bit close to this.